Welcome to the Explainer. Let's just jump right in today, because I want to start by asking you something directly. When did you become this mentally tired? And I don't just mean physically exhausted after a long day. I'm talking about carrying that deep, constant mental heaviness. You know the feeling, right? That kind of fatigue that makes you stare blankly at your inbox at 3 in the afternoon, literally contemplating a sudden career change to becoming a forest ranger just to escape the relentless cycle of procrastination. It's like this thick fog where your focus just isn't anywhere near as sharp as it used to be. Okay, let's dive into this. Why do you feel like you're constantly self-sabotaging? Because look, you have the goals, you have the dreams, you might even have the absolutely perfect plan written down on paper. Yet, when it's actually time to do the work, it feels like you just get pulled right back into stagnation. And what do we always tell ourselves? We say, oh, I just need more discipline. But honestly, that is a massive trap. Here is the huge plot twist of this explainer. The hidden enemy isn't what you think it is. We're all walking around with this completely false belief that we're lacking willpower. But the reality? We are leaking psychic energy. You see, you don't lose your mental strength all at once. You lose it quietly, in these tiny, invisible drains. It's the automatic phone checking, the absolute second you wake up. It's the constant task switching that just shreds your attention span. It's that habit of escaping into comfort the very moment you feel a tiny bit of friction. So hear me on this. You aren't lacking power. You're leaking it. Section 1. Unmasking the ego's trap. Let's look at our biological default. To stop these leaks, we have to understand the psychology behind them. When we feel weak, our very first instinct is to just try and force discipline, right? We try to brute force our way to success, and it fails every single time. Why? Because we are literally fighting our own biology. Think about it this way. Your brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. Evolutionarily speaking, it is biologically hardwired to be lazy just to ensure your survival. It's not evil, it's just really efficient. It's constantly seeking what scientists call cognitive ease, basically the path of least resistance. So when you procrastinate on that massive, life-changing project, it's not a moral failing. You aren't just a lazy person. It is a deeply ingrained biological drive trying to save energy. Now, what's really interesting about this is the actual fear holding you back. The famous psychologist Carl Jung talked about the persona, which is essentially the social mask we wear every day. Well, your ego acts like this overprotective security guard, heavily invested in keeping you in a really safe, predictable role, even if that role is the struggling artist or the chronic procrastinator. Because here's the thing, if you actually succeed, that old character has to die. You aren't actually afraid of failing at all. You are completely terrified of the transformation that real success demands. Moving on to Section 2, Mastering the First Hour. We're going from micro to macro control. So, to outsmart our biology and bypass that overprotective security guard, we have to start at the micro level. If you want to control your life on a macro level, it all starts with how you control the very first minutes of your morning. Your brain is a machine, and a machine needs a setting. If the very first thing you do when you open your eyes is reach for your phone, well, you're immediately giving your brain away to the absolute chaos of the world. Before you've even had a single original thought of your own, you are absorbing someone else's agenda, their news, their noise. You've programmed your machine to be purely reactive instead of intentional. High performers use what we like to call the CEO morning routine to actively dial in that setting. It goes like this. Minutes 1 to 10, silence and awareness. This creates a solid foundation of control before the world even gets a vote on your day. Minutes 10 to 20, movement. And look, this isn't about aesthetics or getting a six-pack. It's about resetting your biological chemistry. You're flushing out that sleep cortisol and actively releasing dopamine. And then, minutes 20 to 60, you do the hard thing first. You tackle the exact task you're dreading the most. By knocking it out immediately, you kill that mental parasite of dread that would otherwise just drain your RAM all day long. Section 3, The Fox and the Lion. Time for some Machiavellian defense. Okay, so we've armored the mind internally, but what happens when you actually step out the front door? The modern social landscape is totally full of competing motives, and if you aren't prepared, it's going to drain your energy just as fast as any bad habit. First up, you have to avoid the kindness trap. Society constantly tells us to always be nice, always be accommodating, but often being overly agreeable is just a pretty mask for our fear of setting hard boundaries. When you're always available and you never say no, people literally stop seeing you as a person. You become a utility. You turn into an emotional doormat or like an emergency button that others only push when they need something from you. And that is a massive, massive leak of your psychic energy. And this brilliantly illustrates how to defend yourself without turning into a jerk. We draw from Machiavelli here. You need to embody two specific archetypes. First, the fox. The fox represents social intelligence, proactively observing the room, reading between the lines, and spotting traps way before you ever step into them. But cleverness alone isn't enough. You must also be the lion. The lion sets firm, non-negotiable boundaries with this quiet, assertive presence. It's not about being loud or aggressive, it's about radiating a strength that proves you are fully capable of taking action. That right there is how you earn real respect. Section 4, rewiring your dopamine system. Let's get into biological defense. Now that we've set up our external social defenses, we need to pivot right back to our internal biology. We live in an attention economy, constantly bombarded by digital stimulation that completely hijacks our reward pathways. To kill this constant distraction, you need a pretty radical approach. Step 1 is a 7-day dopamine reset, a strict digital fast. And yeah, it will be incredibly uncomfortable, but that boredom, that's just your brain healing and returning to its natural baseline. Step 2, aggressively clean your environment. Delete the apps, unfollow the noise, remove the triggers. Step 3, exhaust the beast. Destroy all that excess idle energy with some heavy lifting or an intense run. And step 4, when a craving hits, do not negotiate with it. Instantly change your physical state. Drop for 20 push-ups or go splash freezing cold water on your face just to break the spell. So the crucial point is understanding the difference between passive and earned dopamine. The cheap, empty passive dopamine you get from scrolling and reacting, it just leaves you entirely hollow. But earned dopamine, which comes from doing genuinely difficult things like learning, building, and reflecting, that actually triggers neuroplasticity. It physically rewires your brain for growth. If you are struggling with distraction right now, you really need to understand this. You don't have a discipline problem. You have a system problem. To fix that system, you need to cultivate intentional growth hobbies. You need to become a true hunter of knowledge. You need movement to activate your physical vessel. You need to create and actually finish things, rather than just endlessly consuming them. You need reflection to turn raw, messy experiences into usable insights. And finally, you need to build. And this is guided by the 1,000-day rule. This rule is all about embracing extreme patience. It means eagerly trading your short-term cheap comfort for the long-term quiet power of building something that will completely outlast you. Section 5. Reclaiming your identity. This is the final battle. All of these systems we've talked about, the morning routine, the social boundaries, the dopamine reset, they all compound into one massive macro-level climax. Because the absolute second you start implementing these changes, you are going to face intense internal friction. The author Stephen Pressfield calls this the resistance. But I want you to reframe this completely. Actually, scratch the idea of it being bad. The resistance is not your enemy. It is your ultimate compass and the guardian of your greatness. Think about it. If resistance is pulling you away from doing something hard, that is the exact, undeniable direction you must lean into. It only ever fights you when you are on the very verge of upgrading your identity. To actually walk this path to authentic authority, you can use this simple 3-step framework. First, recognize when your ego is trying to hijack you and pull you back into your comfort zone. Second, observe the fear without becoming it. There is a massive psychological shift between saying, "I am a failure," and simply stating, "I am noticing a feeling of failure right now." That one small linguistic shift gives you the space to breathe. And third, design your choice architecture. Stop relying on sheer willpower. Just make the right choice the easiest one to make, like literally putting a giant water bottle right on your desk so you have to drink it. Let's move to and see how this builds your entire future. Your identity is not changed by sudden, dramatic force. It just isn't. It is changed by the quiet, continuous accumulation of proof. Every single time you push through discomfort, every time you put your phone down when you want to scroll, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. You build an unbreakable identity by keeping those small promises to yourself, stacking your habits, and simply refusing to break the chain. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. And I want to leave you with a question that changes absolutely everything. Take a good, hard look at the safe, predictable story you've been living inside of. It's time to burn it. As you step out of passivity and reclaim your mental power today, what kind of person are you finally giving yourself permission to become? The choice is entirely yours. Go out and start building the evidence for that new identity right now.